Hello, people of the internet. My name is Kendrick Tran, also known as Kendrick Train, also known as a train on track. But this podcast is called a train off track. Get the gist. Today we are here with Cal Campos. Did I say your last name properly?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Alrighty, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Everyone, my name is Cal. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm super excited to be here. Kendrick, thanks so much for having me on. It's really interesting, like, having an intro because I feel like my elevator pitch has changed from,
Uh,
like, graduation to, like, after, like living in, like, a corporate world, and now I'm, like, not in a corporate world. But I guess, like, the simplest form is I'm a digital media producer, creator, just like a digital media person, I like to say. I like help people elevating their digital presence online.
yes. Okay. Okay. Jeez. I've actually never heard. I mean, I think your introduction was the most professional I've ever we've had on here. Usually it's like hi, like I'm like I do you know Maya Marcus?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, her like for example, her intro was like, "Hi, I'm Maya. I model and things. I'm a chocolate princess." That's really cute, but I like it. I appreciate
That's
it.
sweet. Yeah, that's super sweet. Yeah, I think sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know how like quote unquote professional like I should be. Like, am I in an interview? Like, what am I doing? Right? Like a
No,
job
it was
interview.
good. It was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
That's actually something like I think about a lot recently, like elevator pitches. I think because especially since recently I took this course where they were talking about what did you major in?
I majored in media studies.
Oh no, like which area?
Oh, digital communication.
Oh, okay. Okay, because in our PR course, they're saying that when you meet people, there's like a 15-15 rule, and it's
Oh,
like how you look from 15 feet away, and then how you look from 15 like 15 like I don't know centimeters away. I don't know. That seems kind of
wow.
close. But like yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, how you yeah, like how you whatever distance. And then it's like how what you say in your first 15 seconds.
Right.
So it's like I'm like okay. Like
That's
that's
really
interesting.
interesting. Yeah, I heard something similar where it was like people judge you based on three things and it's in an order. One is the way that you look. Two
Yes,
is how you say that your first line and then what you say. So that those like the first like three ways that people kind of gauge how they feel about you. Apparently.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, ooh, I was like, if I'm gonna learn one thing from this class, it's gonna be that. So alrighty. So today, oh wait, no. First, let's go into how we know each other. So for the listeners and the viewers, if you're seeing this on YouTube, a little backstory. Cal and I met like 2, 3 years. No, three is too long. 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah,
And then
2 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, we met at school. We've never had a full conversation. So for the listeners and viewers, this is like the first time you're witnessing us have an actual conversation. I mean, technically it was before we even started recording, but whatever. But yeah, so we were do you want to go ahead and like share how we met each other?
Yeah, if my memory can hold true, I hope. I met our mutual friend, Vanessa, and I knew Vanessa. I think Vanessa followed me on social media like before she even started coming to our
Oh,
school. Yeah. And I was a start leader. So I met her through there and she was like, I follow you on social media and I'm really excited to meet you. And I'm like, oh, I'm excited to meet you too. I've never met her before. And so we became friends. And then you're also friends with Vanessa, I think through like through
high
classism.
school, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
high
through high
school.
school. I didn't know that. That's really cool. And then she introduced us, but I don't remember the details, to be honest, of like the exact meeting point. I'm
No, for
sorry.
sure. No, no, it's okay. Well, I'm not gonna lie and be like, oh, I know every detail. Like, I know what you were wearing. I knew exactly where we were. I think it was very briefly in passing. Like, I forgot exactly. I think she was meeting you for some reason, and then I was like, oh, let me come along and meet this Cal you speak of. And then I came along and met you. It was very I think you guys were, like, in a rush or you were going somewhere together, so I was like, "Okay," like, "I'm Kendrick." But that's also, to be fair, like, in the first around the time when I met you, I was, like, in that phase of in university where I was, like, going around to random people being like, "Hi, I'm Kendrick. Hi, how are you?" Um, but yeah, So I think that's how we met. It was very brief in passing, but I was pretty excited to meet you as well. Not that I knew you from social media or anything, but I think she told me about you, and
Oh,
like I told you before, like she told me about you and like who you are, what you do, your vibes. So I guess I
oh,
was like, oh, I
that's
was
so
like,
sweet.
cool. I guess you could say you were kind of like a celebrity of our
Oh my
school.
gosh. I really like making friends with people. I think so that's why it can come off that way, but I'm flattered, thank you.
No, that's good though. I realized like I don't know, especially recently, like a lot of my friends also are very like like people persons,
Yeah,
people.
people,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. They're always like I don't know. It's just like I've been noticing, especially on social media, like everyone's like going crazy. They're like, "Oh my god, like love you," and I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Wow, I'm really slacking, eh?" No, but I think it's really awesome, and I think that's part of why I was so excited to talk to you because I was
Aw,
oh, for backstories for the listeners again, Cal is one of I'm mostly one of my most excited. I was gonna say customers, one of my most excited guests to have on my podcast. Because this episode, let me just give you a little rundown of what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna talk about the queer community. We're gonna talk about gender and clothes. We're gonna talk about Cal's experiences being trans, and then also like being people of color. We're both for backstory. If you're not watching this, we're both Asian. He's Filipino. They are Filipino, and I'm Vietnamese, Chinese. It's kind of complicated. I don't know myself. I just know I'm generally Asian. And then we're gonna and then we're gonna talk about how living in Canada and just in general like culture influences our clothes and how we feel comfortable in our communities, kind of. So yeah. So do you want to start a little like talk about your thoughts and about clothes in the queer community?
sure. I guess I'll start with like my own personal experience. I'm transgender. I don't know if that came up earlier or not, but I'm,
Yeah.
I'm transgender, and I'm female assigned at birth. So growing up, I uh, obviously like had like all this like pressure to wear traditionally feminine clothes. I started dancing when I was 3, and I danced ballet all the way until I was 17. And I also danced like jazz and hip hop, and I did a whole bunch of things. My parents got me into a whole bunch of stuff that was like
That's awesome.
tradition. It was cool, but it was like traditionally feminine. Like I was like
Mm.
it was a school that was only had like women and girls. So like I was like it was very gender normed and everything. And I enjoyed dancing. I still really enjoy dancing. But it was definitely I think when I got older, like maybe like in my teens, and I started like kind of just thinking about when I was like most comfortable, or maybe I wasn't even like fully aware of it yet, but I knew that certain things didn't make me comfortable. Like I didn't like dresses growing up, and like skirts made me uncomfortable, and like certain outfits just made me uncomfortable, and I couldn't really put my finger on it. I was just like, oh, I'm just like I'm a tomboy, like that. Like that's really
Yeah.
what I watered everything down to. Um, and by all means, like that could have also been it. Like I could have just like not like traditional feminine clothes, and that would have also been totally fine, not related to me being trans at all. But I remember coming to university. So a little bit more backstory on that. I grew up in the Catholic faith. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I went to Catholic school and everything. And so talking about the LGBTQ community was like not existent at all, let alone the
Oh,
trans community. So I knew what it meant to be gay. I did not know what a trans person was or what that meant at all, other than like people like alienating trans people. So when I went to university, which was not related to a religion or a certain background or culture or anything. And I just got to meet a whole bunch of different people from different backgrounds and cultures and religions and such. It was really like mind blowing for me because I was able to like learn about just like simple diversity that not everyone is like Catholic, for example. Like just like it
wow.
was so mind blowing for me. Yeah, because I came from like a super, I guess, one ideology community, like very
For
like
sure.
Catholic conservative. It was like very Italian dominant community. Um, so yeah, coming to university was wild. One of my really good friends back then, we had this conversation about like social constructs and this idea of like being feminine or being masculine or like anything of that sort is just like something that society has told us it is. So like certain like feminine clothing or like masculine clothing. That's like society is just like, this is feminine and this is masculine and now you have to follow this. And like once I started thinking about like, oh, society just told me this thing, I started exploring this idea of like, has society just told me that I'm a girl, and do I have to be a girl? And so that's kind of like
Wow.
when, yeah, that was first year. So that was 5-ish years ago. Whoa, time has passed. Um, that was like 5-ish, almost like 6 years ago. Uh, and that like that's when I started like thinking like maybe I don't want to be a girl, or maybe I want to explore what it means to not be a girl, even though I have no idea what that even means, because
Wow.
that was not something I've ever explored before. So my friend and like I had like two really really close friends at the time. I was like, hey, can we try the pronoun like they them? I like maybe that's something that I'd be comfortable with, and we started like using that. And like it was just like between like us three that we use that pronoun. Like I didn't like explain to anyone because I didn't even know if that was something I was like interested in. And then as time went on, I was like, oh, I'm really interested in this. And like I knew that I liked the name Cal. I don't even know where that came from, but like I like the name Cal, and people, my friends, like my really close friends, started calling me Cal. They use they them pronouns. And then it's interesting because once I didn't have gender dysphoria growing up.
Hmm.
And for viewers who don't know what gender dysphoria is, it's like I guess to simplify it, like extreme discomfort with your body based on your biological sex. And I didn't have gender dysphoria growing up. I wasn't uncomfortable with my body. Like I was like, okay, like this is my body, whatever. But when I was like, wow, I am empowered to not be a girl, and I can maybe wear clothes that I'm interested in, and I won't feel weird in dresses and stuff like that, that's when I started feeling gender dysphoria. So I was like, okay, how do I try to alleviate this? And I started, checking up on YouTube, like trans people, like just like, when you're younger and you just
Yeah.
like don't know anything. So you're just like, I'm gonna Google this thing. That was me on YouTube, that was me on Google, and like just finding other like creators or people just like talking about their experience. Um, and some folks online were like, maybe you want to try, exploring different types of clothing that like make you feel comfortable in your body and such. And I was like, at that point, I was like, oh, I'd never realized that I was like really uncomfortable with dresses. Like I knew that I didn't like dresses, but I was like, maybe this is like related to that, or just like the way that I expressed myself was not the way I wanted to express myself growing up. And so that's why I felt like kind of like a weird barrier with dresses. So I remember like trying on button up shirts and stuff, and like uh, I remember this one time. It was like a little bit like maybe like halfway through first year or something of that sort.
Yeah.
Um, I had worn like my father's sweater, and this is kind of funny, but like also kind of awful. But I don't have the greatest relationship with my parents. They are like
Hmm.
they like growing up. They had a really really hard time accepting that when I came out as gay. I came out as gay when I was 13.
Hmm. Wow.
And yeah, and so like coming out as trans was also, it wasn't as bad as coming out as gay, but coming out as trans was like all like a big thing for them because they could like visually see it, I guess, like the changes of
Yeah.
me to like not look like traditionally feminine. I remember wearing my father's sweater. It was uh like just like a sweater you would wear to like a Christmas party, just like a really like traditional, like just like it wasn't that big of a deal, but I wore the
Yeah.
sweater. And I remember, and like I went to school, and my mom was like, "Is this who you want to be?" I'm like, "I'm wearing a sweater. It's a sweater." I know that like that sounds awful, but I think it's so funny. Sorry, mom. Um, I'm sure she would laugh about it now, hopefully. But like she was really really upset about it, and but it was interesting because she was really upset, but I had never felt better in my skin than when I was like, yeah, I could
Wow.
just wear this sweater that is like I guess traditionally masculine, but it's just like a sweater. It's just clothing. So I think it's really interesting uh I guess the attributes that we give certain pieces of clothing, and that's like what we're talking about now. And like from there, like I just continued on like wearing like trying like button up shirts and like different types of like clothing that I really enjoyed, and like I could definitely feel myself feel more empowered to just like express myself. And I, as much as clothing is just fabric, it's
Yeah.
also something that shows like part of you, like the way that you present to the world, the way that you like want to dress your hair, or like the types of colors that you want to wear and stuff. And I had never just like explored fashion before,
Yeah.
because I'm like, oh, I just don't like all these things that my parents are giving me. Like I remember like Christmas gifts and like stuff like that where it's just like traditionally feminine stuff, and I'm like, I don't like this. And yeah, and it was just like so uncomfortable. And I just never could ever imagine a world where I love clothing. Like I love clothing now. And
Hmm.
like I do a lot of like thrifting just because like just like saving and also like saving money and also like reusable and like reducing like waste and such.
Hmm.
But like I've just never felt interested in clothing before than when I was able to actually genuinely wear clothing outside of the traditional feminine clothing. So that was like a really really big thing for me in the past like 5 years. Like prior to then I don't think I was interested in clothing in any way. Like just like give me like a random t-shirt and like random shorts, like basketball shorts, and just like that was like me as a kid like growing up. I'm just like that's all I care about. Just like it's fine, it's comfortable. um and like that being said, I also want to note that there are folks who do like wearing like if you're like a female, like you maybe you want to wear like traditionally masculine clothes, and like that doesn't necessarily
Hmm.
mean that they're trans, right? Like
Yeah.
being trans and like gender identity is not related to the way that you present yourself or like the clothing that you wear or your hair or like anything of that sort. And like that's not related to like your sexual orientation either, right? So like all those things can be totally different and not related to each other in any way.
Yeah.
Just for me, style was like so related to or like so grounded in like gender roles growing up for
Yeah.
me. And it
For
was
sure.
like a lot to just like carry. And I like didn't realize how uncomfortable I was until I wasn't uncomfortable. It was like it's so weird. It's like the more knowledge you get, the more you realize like the world is bigger than what you've just like
Of
learned in the past
course.
years, right?
Yeah.
um so that's really what it was for me. And like I mean now like I've been on testosterone for 3 years now, and I'm like able to like wear like the clothing that I want to wear. And like I really love fashion. If I had more money I would probably go out and buy a lot more clothes. But yeah, especially during the pandemic, I'm like I can wear the same shirt for 3 days and no one will see me. So I'm like I guess whatever, like fashion right now is like kind of hard to like express yourself because you're just inside for most of the time.
Yeah.
But fashion definitely was a really really big part of me being trans and me coming to terms with just like feeling more comfortable in my skin like that. And like probably like my hair, like I remember I had hair all the way down to my butt coming into oh no just like growing up. And then in university I cut it like I cut it short. It
Oh
was actually
wow.
like a dare that my one of my like best friends gave me. She was like, why don't you just cut your hair? And I'm like, okay. And I cut my hair, and then that was
Oh
it. I'm like I
wow.
don't
And
know,
it's stuck.
it stuck, yeah. And I was like, "Oh, I like this." It took a while to like it because it was just like it was like just like a poof ball originally because like my hair was just like whatever. But yeah, that's like I guess that's my experience with like style in a nutshell.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm just like no. I'm like wow. I'm like you basically just said the entire podcast. Like let's just end it now. Um.
No, I
uh.
want to hear your experience with like style and how that's like affected you and like how it I guess empowers you or how your feelings
Yeah.
around it too. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, when I said this prompt, I meant in the queer community in general, like not specific stories just yet. But okay, you went into it. I was like, okay. Um, but I was actually really like it's really crazy that you mentioned thrifting because well, for one, I in my well, and not the one I posted before us filming this, but the episode I'm posting before we go this one goes up. We talk about like unpopular opinions and we talk
Mhm.
about people's thoughts on thrifting and like how like some people see it as like a way of like kind of hurting the people that need to afford it but then also
Right.
supporting the environment. So it's like if you want to hear more about that you should go listen to it.
Good plug.
But good plug, right? Thank you. But in terms of i guess I guess my story is a little bit more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but the thing is the reason I asked like about the queer community in general and I wanted to talk about like as a whole and not necessarily about in-depth stories just yet is because I'm curious to see because for example and you basically answered it as well but like how for example like when you go clubbing, I don't know if you go clubbing a lot, um but like people feel as though like wearing mesh or lace is like too this way or that way or which is very interesting to me, and that's why I wanted to talk about the queer community because, for example, like you will see the queer community where they are the ones like pushing the boundaries of what like fashion is and like what it represents and how it's how you're supposed to dress. So it's
Right.
like you'll see lace, mesh, you'll see platform boots, you'll see stuff like that, and that's very interesting. but none of that really relates to me because that's not my style. But specifically for me, so for the listeners or whoever doesn't know, I'm a gay man. Um, and I usually call myself the gay Asian boy. Um, um, but so in terms of style relating to me is because I've definitely talked about this before in my podcast, but for you, I'll go through what kind of a history of me and my and style. But when I was really young, for example, in middle school, um, I basically wore whatever like my mom gave me, and which was typically like clothes that she would get from like Vietnam or clothes that were like color coordinating or like baby gap and stuff like that. Or like that brand that closed down called Gymboree, which is like a chill, like a
Yeah.
baby's brand or whatever. But yeah, and then when we got into middle school, it was kind of the same thing. But I dressed myself, and similar to you, I don't exactly have like the best relationship with my family. Um, so it was very interesting. But in middle school, I followed the same lines. Like I did a lot of color coordinating. Like I remember, like I don't think there was one day where I like even tried color clashing. I just felt weird. But then as I got into university, this is when I started like questioning, like, like again, similar to your experience, but not really like questioning like who I was and what that meant and like what it looked like to be like me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I didn't and for context, I didn't like fully like I'm not like fully out either. Like, well, at least to my family. Um, but in terms of like but to the rest of the world, I am. Like, to like I'm not gonna hide it to anyone that if they come up and ask me, I'm not gonna hide it. But that happened
Right.
in university. So in high school, the way that clothes was represented to me, I was similar to your thing with basketball shorts. I kind of just wore stuff that was comfortable. But also this kind of breaches into the topic I want to go further into later,
Mhm.
is I really felt the urge to dress like typically like very Caucasian. I don't know what the best way to put
Ah,
it.
yes, I know what you're saying. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, so the thing is like the high school I went to was not by any means like very like Caucasian or very like we were pretty diverse. Like I would like to think our school was pretty diverse. And it was in a decent area. Like to be fair, the school down the street was basically all like I'm just gonna say white people. I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
it was basically a bunch of white people. Um, and so like especially compared to their school, our school was very diverse, very well mixed. A lot of like I would say every 2 in 10 people were white. So like that was really
Okay.
cool. It was very interesting. Um, but the thing is like a lot of people there were also obsessed with the whole idea of like popping a colon with the boys, like 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 the I don't know, like that the typical like white boy uniform.
Right. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. So for example, like in high school, I was super obsessed with Toms. Like
Okay.
the yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
I was super obsessed with Toms. I was obsessed with Sperry's. I loved
Ooh.
polos, baseball tees, cargo shorts, like stuff like that. Uh,
Wow.
and I think part of that reason was like, well, back then I wasn't really into fashion either. Like that's why I studied communications and not fashion. Um, um, but in high school, that's what it was. Like that's how I dressed, and that's what I thought was super sick. So like the closer I looked I remember there was this one guy that was older than me, and I was like, if he's wearing, by all means, he did not dress well. Like I'm not trying to say like he was like, ooh, like fashion, like you're cool. But if anything closer to what he was wearing, I was down for it. I was like, that's
Ah.
it. That's what I want. Um, yeah, and I guess it's also because I don't have like an older brother or I guess like that kind of like figure in my lifestyle, like a role model. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
That's why I'm currently in the hunt for a mentor. If anyone's listening and they want to hook me up with a mentor, hook me up. Um, but I think you would be a really cool mentor, by the way. I don't know if you ever
Aw,
thought about being a mentor.
thanks.
Like that'd be really cool. Anyways,
Ah, we'll talk about that later. Talk later.
okay.
That's great, thank
Besides
you.
besides the point. But yeah, so in high school I was like super like, let's go, like let's go with the boys. Like, okay, like again, I hate to like really gender it, but like that's what it was, you know.
Right, yeah.
Um and yeah, it's like, and I remember like all of my colored friends too, they would all do the same thing. And in high school, if it wasn't that, it was either like hoodies and sweaters and sweatpants, and I'm like, and that just always like rubbed the wrong way. Like I just yikes. Not for me. Um, but that, I also feel like that's because I was in a time where I was very like confused. Like
Uh,
not to say that it was always on my mind. It was kind of just like, oh, like I know like I don't know what I should be wearing, so I'm gonna wear this or that. And but that's also because that's what aligns with my head as well. Like I'm not sure like what this means, what I should be doing, if this means anything, kind of. And I think that also goes into a lot of like my mental health issues as well, and also why like high school was not that great for me. Not that I think it is like that ooh hurrah, like wow, high school is the best year of your lives kind of thing. Um, but yeah, because I was very confused and I kind of threw myself into work to kind of make up for it. Besides the point. But in universities, when I got fully committed, I was like, you know what, new year, kind of like new year, new me, new
oh yeah.
school. I promised myself in grade 12 that once I graduated, like it would be a whole new person because I was like
Wow.
kind of like did you watch Dear Evan Hansen?
Yes, yes.
Oh
Oh
wait, no,
wait.
no,
Oh no, I'm
not
sorry.
that, no,
Sorry.
no.
I'm thinking about Dear Simon, I think. Or
Yes,
something.
that's what I'm
Oh
talking
yeah, I
about.
watched that one. Yeah, I watched that one. I didn't
I
watch.
watched no, Dear Evan Hansen is a play. I watched that too. Really good. Everyone should watch it. Um, but yeah, Dear Simon. Sorry, and you know that scene. I think he had a similar thing. Like when I leave this place and like there's gonna be like parades and like rainbow flags and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. That's exactly the same vibe. That's the same flags. Didn't expect a parade or anything like that, obviously. But I was like, you know what? We're gonna commit. We're just gonna go for it. Um, so when I left high school and university, this was like the biggest shift for me in terms of my style and my fashion and becoming who I
Cool.
am today. Um, because once I left high school, I threw everything out, like literally
Wow.
everything. Yeah, like I started whole new. And this is around the time when I was getting into like minimalism as well. So, because if you don't know, I'm a minimalist. So,
Cool.
I was, yeah. So I was going into that, and that was like the first start. So I was like, you know what? I'm embracing who I am, and and that technically means like rainbow flags, sure, whatever. Um, but I'm gonna wear only black and white. So I committed to wearing only black and white. And I think I allowed the color yellow because that was my favorite color at the time. Yeah, just for funsies. Like
Just for fun.
sunflower,
Okay.
yeah, like sunflower yellow was my favorite color at the time. And I believe my friend Chelsea, if she's probably listening to this, she actually owns one of the only jackets I had that were that shade of yellow. Um,
Wow.
yeah. But yeah, so when I went into university, I was like, I'm embracing who I am. I'm doing whatever it takes. So that means like that's when I started wearing more I remember my first big deal thing was I wore like those blanket scarves, like those ponchos.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before I started wearing it, I was like, I've never seen a man wear it before.
Right.
So that's why
Wow.
I was like, this is low key a big deal. I was like, I'm proud of myself. And
Oh
then and
yes.
yeah, and it is yeah, and it's not even like an unisex item, like marketed as a unisex item either.
Right.
Like it's you marketed as towards women. So I was like, this is a big deal. And then from there, it kind of went into like shoes, where I started wearing more women's shoes because I felt men's shoes were too boring. Um, and then from there, I went to pants, where I started wearing like more what are those like
Is it?
culottes?
I don't know.
Culottes?
Is it the? I think I know what you're talking about when you do this.
Like those really
Actually.
flowy pants, like those
Yes,
really
the
flowy
flowy
pants.
pants. Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think
I
they're called
understand.
culottes or something like that. I love how I'm the one that that's in fashion and I don't even know. I think they're called culottes. Anyways, but yeah, I started wearing culottes. I started shopping at Aritzia. Again, still
Nice.
black and white, still black and white.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of high-waisted pants, stuff like that. Um, and then from there, I think it was very like mainstream there. Like it was still like it was ooh like you're testing the boundaries, but it's still very like you can really tell. Like it's not like wow, like I'm wearing a shirt that says like like I don't know, right? But it's when I started working at this brand called Chloe. I don't know if you know the brand Chloe, but it's
Yeah, perfume as well, right? Bags
yes,
and
yes,
perfume? Yes.
yeah, the designer brand. Yeah. When I started working at Chloe, when I really started like delving in to like women's clothes. So I started
Cool.
wearing like women's tops. I started wearing shirts, like button-up shirts that were a little longer that were made for women, stuff like that. And I'm even to this day, like majority of the jackets I own in my closet are all women's. Um,
Wow.
yeah. But that's the thing, like because when I committed to it, so I was still wearing very basic things, but when I started working at Chloe is when I started to give committing to only black. And
Oh.
again, yeah, and the reason I got into minimalism is again because like my mental health thing. Like I was like, oh, apparently it provides like mental clarity. It's a lot simpler, and even to this day, like thinking about wearing colored pants stresses me out. Like I'm just like, wow, that's a lot. Like that's a lot. um, but yeah, so I started wearing more black. Um, so that's when I started wearing like blouses, like longer button ups, started wearing again. And because I worked at a women's brand, I was like, okay, like I want this jacket, I want these earrings, this jewelry. And that's actually the time when I got my ears pierced too. And I only
Oh,
have the
cool.
one ear pierce, which is on the side that like apparently associates you with being queer, like the
Right.
one side. So I remember I went to New York. I went to New York for a Louis Vuitton event, and I was
Cool.
like, yeah. uh, and then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna get my ears pierced, and it's gonna be on the one ear
Oh.
that's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because yeah, because the thing with like, at least for like being a gay man, the thing about the thing about flirting is like, you never really know, you know? You're kind of like,
Right.
oh, like okay, and even if there are like stereotypes, it's like you can't like that's not a good judgment of who
Yeah,
someone is or what they represent. So
exactly.
and yeah, and even like and even the way I dress is a lot more like out there, but it's still not like something that's gonna like that's inherently like feminine, I guess you could say.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's why I got the ear pierced because I was like, this is this is my commitment. This is my like
Wow.
this is my commitment to yeah, kind of just being out there. Yeah, and to where I am now, I actually have my tarot cards read a couple days ago,
Oh,
and and my tarot card said I should introduce more color into my wardrobe. So I was like, why not? But I'm definitely into right now. I'm like in the process of like looking like I want to start wearing skirts. Um, I want to start wearing like the blouses have gone a lot more like risque. Like I started
wow.
wearing lace last year. And by means, I'm not like, and if you picture like the typical club like queer person or gay
Mhm,
person
yeah.
specifically, it's like you probably think like, or at least in my head, it looks like someone wearing like a mesh shirt, like you can see like the nipples and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
It's by no means that, but it's definitely a lot more about like showing off my body and like not being afraid to embrace like what that means and like what other people think.
I love that.
Um, yeah, and honestly, right now, like my biggest role model is like Harry Styles, and if that's for like that's a major reason.
Right.
I remember I was on LinkedIn and I was like ranting. Someone posted about a thing about how it's kind of toxic that parents think Harry Styles being a role model is a bad thing. And then I was like,
Right.
and then I mean, I don't know your thoughts on like that on Harry Styles, but I was like, I like that was the one LinkedIn post like I interacted with.
Wow.
I was like, because everyone was like, I don't want my kids growing up in a time where like it's okay to wear dresses. I
Oh
like,
my
and
god.
and I was like, I was like, first of all, at the end of the day, if you are still thinking about this, you're not living in the 20th century, 21st century, first of all. And then second of all, it's like at the end of the day, it's a piece of clothes. So the fact that you think a piece of clothes associates you with a certain ideal or like a certain image is like if I wore like for example like like old like way back when they wore like literal sheets like they were togas, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was literally a piece of fabric wrapped around them. So it's
Right.
like what's to say like what is and what isn't feminine or masculine because it's literally a
Right.
piece of clothes. You know, and like you said, it's literally fabric. So that's the thing I'm like currently working on now is where and the thing that kind of pisses me off, and that's why we that this flows into our next topic actually, is I wanted to talk about like your thoughts on gender and clothes specifically because I know your experience with like clothes and like of course, you and your sexual identity. But I want to talk about like your thoughts on just in general, similar to that Harry Styles post. Like, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on clothes and about them being gendered?
For sure.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Did you want to
Oh no, 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 no.
finish
Go
the thought?
ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I just want to answer your question. I love Harry Styles. I think Harry Styles is awesome. I love Harry Styles. I also do want to note that I think Harry Styles is like a really great role model in the sense that he's pushing, like he's, I guess I don't know if he would have also like worn the clothing he's wearing right now if he wasn't like a celebrity, but I think
For sure.
him being a celebrity and hopefully knowing that he has like social responsibility, like, and people are looking towards him as a role model, if he knows that like he's pushing the envelope or like paving the pathway essentially for people who
Exactly.
want to just not stick to gender roles, right? um that being said, though, I know that there are a bunch of uh artists and celebrities that are like people of color, like black men and such, who have done that prior to Harry Styles, and that's the only like thing that I qualm I have, I guess, with people being like
Hmm.
Harry Styles is awesome, because like I think Harry Styles is awesome too. I just wish that people would also acknowledge like the black men and the people of color who have been wearing
For
like skirts and
sure.
like try doing those things in the past, like Prince and such, right? So, like that's the only thing, but I still think Harry Styles is awesome. I
Oh,
just
Prince wore skirts?
I think Prince was pushing the just like the gender norms and like in terms
For
of like
sure.
clothing and such. I don't know if they're like skirts per se, but I know that he was like pushing those
For
expectations
sure.
of people.
To be fair, I
Um,
think Harry Styles is like the modern day Prince. Just my thoughts. Just my
interesting,
just my
interesting.
thoughts. Okay,
Just your thoughts.
continue.
So sorry, your original question was about
Gender and clothes. Like, what are your
gender
thoughts
and
on
clothes.
do you know any backstory behind why it is, or like, what are your thoughts?
Backstory about you know what? I don't have backstory, but I do have. I was trying to like pull into my like academic brain because I did my I did my final thesis paper on culture in men's and women's bathrooms.
Oh,
But not
wow.
related to
That's
style.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool just because obviously I went to the women's bathroom when I identified as a woman, and then I started going to the men's bathroom when I started just like presenting as a man because it.
Yeah,
I mean, I prefer like just a gender neutral bathroom, but like I sometimes have to go to the men's bathroom, whatever. And just I just realized that people act different, like just the culture in both rooms are just so different. So I did my thesis on that. Anyway, not related
that's
to that.
so
It
cool.
was
That's
really, really
awesome.
cool. It was really interesting. But maybe a conversation for another day. Since we're talking about style. My thoughts on gendered clothing and such. I think it's hard to say in like personally for me, I wish that clothing was just like clothing and there was like us like stores can just be like here are clothes that like I don't know. I don't know if it would be like titled like traditionally feminine clothes or just like clothes that are just like skirts and like I don't know. I just
Yeah,
wish it wasn't like men's and women's clothing because then
yeah,
it feels weird for people if they want to like if they identify as a man and then they go into the women's clothing because they just like skirts and stuff. You know, I wish it was just like titles
exactly.
of like skirts and like heels. I'm just thinking about random things right now and just
Oh,
like you
yeah,
know
yeah,
button
yeah.
ups and stuff. I wish it was just like titled like that or just like in broader terms where you could just be like you don't have to be like I'm
Yeah,
going to the men's section now like I like it's just like oh I'm going to the heel section I'm just gonna go get heels like it's you know it's like I wish it was like more normalized in that way. I think it's also hard because I know there are folks as we've talked about like just the way that we express ourselves through clothing. It empowers you like for example like you want to get into like skirts and stuff like that is so awesome and like it empowers you to like express yourself in the way that you want to express yourself, right? And like in other ways I think it's also hard for folks like trans men and trans women who really empower themselves by identifying as a man and a woman as they are and like
hmm,
going into like a trans woman like being able to like go into like the women's section and like be like yeah I'm in the women's section like that empowers me. I guess like I often like just debate with myself a lot how to be inclusive and also like inclusive to like
empowering.
non-binary folks, but also yeah and empower like trans men and women who have not been able to like grow up living like their life that they wanted to live, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah,
And so
yeah,
that's why it gets kind of hard because it's like with like they them pronouns for example like
yeah,
you want to use like usually like gender neutral pronoun or gender neutral language until you know someone's identity or the way that they want to be addressed is like the
for
best way to go
sure.
about it. And then it's also like important to not always use gender neutral language when like someone wants to be addressed a certain way. Like if someone is like, yeah, I'm a man, and like that empowers them because like they're a trans man, for example, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like it just gets so bleh. Anyway. I feel
Oh,
like
for
I'm
sure.
going off topic, but in a perfect world for me, like I'd probably want gender to just be um like, or like clothing, at least like stuff to not be gendered, just so that we could just like use items without having this like weird thing over our heads of like, oh, I'm picking up like a deodorant stick that says like men's deodorant, or like
Yeah.
just like like women's heels. I don't know, whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, for
where you
sure.
could
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
wear what you wanted to. um
Oh, that's awesome.
but yeah, but there's a lot of debate on back and forth in terms of just like empowering other folks who might be excluded from that. But I think overall, it would probably be most inclusive to just nix out the idea of like, here is a section in a store that's just for men, and here's a section of a store that's just for women. If it was just like a store with clothes, and then there's different titles of like styles of clothes, because they're everyone
For
just likes to
sure.
dress differently.
Oh,
um
that's interesting. Okay.
yeah, those are my
No,
two
I
cents.
No, I find that really awesome because especially the thing that you said about because the thing I like that you didn't mention that you like I like that the fact that you didn't say it is that you didn't say androgynous. And like you know what I
Oh.
mean? Like I don't really like the idea of like labeling it as like you know what I mean? Like I just
Mhm.
feel like I of course like that's just my feeling
Yeah.
about it, of course, but I just feel as though, for example, there are a lot of brands that are like now at least that are changing and branding themselves as like an androgynous clothing brand or
Mhm.
like a unisex clothing brand. And like it makes sense and I get it and I get like that's your way of trying to be inclusive. But my and but I my problem with those kind of brands in general, like, it's a whole other story. Just because, for example, I know most all of the brands I know that do that, I either make sweatpants, and then which is like, why are they gendered in the first place? Or they make like, or they make like really extravagant clothes for the sake of being extra,
Oh,
and I'm like, I get
interesting.
that, yeah, because a
Uh-huh.
lot of the clothes, yeah, because a lot of the clothes that I see that's like androgynous, or at least the brands, or maybe even at least maybe just here in Toronto, like they do the absolute most to make sure that like the clothes are like they're like this is androgynous and you know it. Like I'm like, but I'm like can I like I just like the idea, like you said, of just making it like clothes, you know?
Right. Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. I think I
Yeah,
understand. Just
because
like,
we're
sorry, continue. Yeah.
yeah. No, because we're avoiding this idea of like labels, but then you're also now putting this new umbrella label over it, and which, in my personal opinion, has like this really weird stigma behind it. So it's like if you just label it as clothes, there is no problem or concern as to and the empowering thing I love a lot that you said too is because like for example like me being able even like again like you specifically meant like mentioned like trans community specifically, but for example like me being able to say like I wore a woman's item is kind of really cool because I'm like wow like now I feel like I'm doing something like I'm like oh like
Right.
I'm like breaking down boundaries.
Yes,
um
yes, yes.
yeah, but it's just weird that my thoughts on that is just I just it's just weird that that has to be a thing, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, I totally hear you on that. I think it's I've never thought about what you said about like the androgyny and such, because like
Yeah,
I think androgyny is really cool. I guess it's like cool that there's like a word to describe this mixture of feminine and masculine style, but I never thought of it like in the way that you put it, where it's like now we have to like put this like other extra label, when it could have we could have just like nixed the label altogether, and it could have just been
exactly.
clothes. Like we could have just simplified it and just called it clothes. Like that could have what it
Yeah,
that could be what it was. And like no, that's really interesting. I think it's also interesting because um and this is just like something that I've realized, like people often associate androgyny with being non-binary. So now they're
mhm,
like, okay, so now we have like three categories of like androgyny. If you don't really like fit into like these other categories, like being a man or masculinity, or like being a woman and femininity, then you fit into like non-binary and you're androgynous, and like and now we create this like these like these three different like bins that people may or may not exist in. And I don't know, it gets really mixed up, because it obviously like expression and like gender and like orientation, like everything is just like a fluid spectrum that you just like exist on, but you don't like, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah,
now we've
exactly.
created these like three bins, and it's like, what if you don't like neatly fit into one of those bins? And like, do we have to like make more?
Exactly.
It gets exhausting.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what I'm saying because the whole idea of andro because now, like, of those three categories, right? Because, for example, you said when you associate men, that's like masculine, and then females like feminine. But now when you think of androgyny, it's like you think of excess, you know? Like,
Yes.
so it's like, oh, like I'm gonna wear like this rainbow shirt because I'm androgynous, or like I'm gonna wear this shirt with cutouts where boobs should be, but I don't have boobs because it's like you know what I mean? Like it's like can those might not be good examples, but I'm just saying
Right.
like I just think it's like this idea of like you're just adding an extra label. So like you said, I don't know, just oh wow. I've actually never had like an in-depth conversation about this either, so I'm really glad that this was a good conversation for the both of us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like I've never had a conversation like this either, which is like it's really really fascinating and interesting. And just like before, sorry if you can hear my partner in the other room. She's on a meeting right now. I hope it's not like interfering with this.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Okay, cool. But what was I gonna say? I just wanted to comment on some of the stuff that you said. First of all, thanks so much for like sharing your story with like fashion, your relationship with fashion, like growing up, and how it's like, you know, like helped you express yourself and like empower yourself, and like also everything with like mental health and such. I wanted to comment on like also being like a person of color, and like growing up in a uh uh sorry, like a Caucasian dominant community.
Yeah,
I definitely see like when you said that you were like dressing Caucasian, I guess that's like the best way to
yeah,
describe it, or like westernized culture, or like Canadian, or like, you know, just like North American culture, like, you know, predominantly Caucasian.
yeah.
Um, I thought it was interesting that you said that, because I definitely realized that growing up too, like just automatically being like all my role models were white men. Like when I'm like, oh, who do I want to look like when I go on testosterone? Like I'd like look at like Zac Efron. I don't know, like random like white men. Like and it was like, and it's
Zaga.
like I didn't have like I didn't have just like people of color to look up to, like in terms of style, in terms of role models and stuff. And I remember like with Asian hair, I don't know if you experience it, but like when I buzz, I usually have my sides buzzed, and when
Mhm.
it grows out, it goes straight out. It doesn't grow
Yes,
down.
yes,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, you know that. And so like I remember just like despising my hair for like, I still have like my qualms with it, and like but I'm still trying to like just like relearn like those behaviors and like ideologies and stuff. But like I just like despise my hair whenever it grew out to the side, because I'm like, it doesn't look
Mm.
like all my white role models.
Yeah,
And it right, and it was just like so weird. So like style definitely, or like you don't even, I didn't even realize it until like late into university, but like style definitely has to do with like, I guess what you're taught as well, and then you have to like kind of like learn how to like do your own thing, um and just like find yourself within all the things that you've been taught already. I thought that was interesting.
exactly. I actually shared the like a quote I saw I read in a book. Well, I didn't read it. I kind of watched a video about the book, and I'm gonna get the book. But but it was basically it's a book called A New World. I mentioned this in my previous episode as well. But it was basically about. Oh wow! I just realized we talked about gender and clothes in the previous episode as well, I think. Anyways, but it was basically talking about how the reason we see these way, like we think about these ways, is because again, like society, like that's the way we were raised into it. So we have no other form of reference as to how we should be thinking about it, and which is I think and which I would think is why like the whole like millennial Gen Z era is like so like they're considered like activists or like so like active. It's just because we're questioning everything, and I think
Yes.
that's what it is really. It's not necessarily like activism, it's just like curious, and we're trying to find the appropriate like like a good answer as to why, you know.
Right.
So I think that's very interesting.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, we I did want to talk about a little bit more, but we're
Yeah.
running out of time.
Well, we can if you want, we can try to push it like 10 more minutes if you want.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. So I'm just gonna
Okay.
do the wrap up right now. So for the listeners or watchers, if y'all don't know, oh, also, actually, you're the perfect person to ask for this.
Yeah.
So, I used to say guys a lot in my intro. Um, And I assume you like you've experienced like heard this or even like in YouTube videos and just in general, like a lot of people say guys and mean the general everyone. But someone commented on one of my on someone DM'd me the other like in the beginning of my podcast and was like, "Oh, I think you should stop gendering your intro." So like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting that you said that because when I was working at like our school, I don't know if you say our school name for like privacy reasons or not.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I don't. No, I don't.
okay, okay,
I
yeah,
don't. I
no,
mean, I don't really care because we don't really like either of us don't go because we're online now, and then you don't go there
right.
anymore. So like, but
Yeah, but we actually we took out the when I worked at our school as like a start leader, so that was someone who just like helped like prospective students learn about the school and like new students like we would just like help them get acquainted with the school and transition into like university life.
mhm.
Um so during my time there, that's when I was working as a start leader, but then I also came out as trans, and that like started the conversation about pronouns and gender
Oh
language and
wow.
inclusivity and diversity. Yeah. And for me in particular, me in particular, like I don't if someone's like, hey guys, to like a group of people who like they know that like we're all fine with it, like that it doesn't
Mhm.
bother me. But
Okay.
I like for the general public, I know that there are folks who do feel uncomfortable with that. And so like that's
Mhm.
why like I'll like whenever I'm able to like I'll bring that up. And like I do think that it's like safest in terms of just like being inclusive and like just like making sure like it might not like trigger someone like a trans woman for
Mm.
example who might
Yeah.
feel weird about it. Like I totally understand that people are trying to be like gender neutral because like linguistics are constantly changing, and at some point in the past 10-20 years like people just started saying guys as like a gender neutral thing, but
Mhm.
it does hurt people. So like when it comes to like the general public, I think it's like good to like say like folks or y'all or just
Mm.
like hey everyone, or like those are
Okay.
sorts of things that
Okay.
yeah, and it takes
Okay.
time, so like by all means like give yourself the grace to be like hey guys, oh shoot, sorry, hey y'all, or like
Yeah.
hey everyone, or like hey like thanks for coming in, blah 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 blah, right? Like give yourself time because it takes time. Like I had to learn it, I had to relearn it. Like I don't use like I don't really use like dude anymore for the most part. Like with
Mhm.
my friends who like I know who are comfortable, like they're okay with it. But like for the most part, like I've cut out gender language because I don't want it to be like reflex that I'm like I say something and I'm like oh shoot, like I don't
Yeah, for
know
sure.
anything about that person's background. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So because that's what I've been doing. Like I used to say guys, and I've been saying y'all a lot. So I
good.
just wanted to just to confirm. But okay.
That's great.
So so for the listeners or the watchers, as y'all know, at the end of every episode, we always play a game called "We're Not Really Strangers" by the artist Kareen. Um, and then, so the game is basically a game where you get to know each other on a more personal level. And there are three levels to the game. Also, super side note, you mentioned your partner. They have a dating expansion pack. So
Oh,
you might want to look into that.
cool.
That's what I'm saying. So if
That'd
you
be
want to get
fun.
it, you might shipping is really expensive. I don't know why, but just sharing. Okay. But yeah, so as mentioned before, like what level would you want to answer a question from? Reflection, perception, wait, what? Oh, I didn't mix it up. Oh shit. Um, okay. Reflection, connection, or perception.
Oh my gosh. What do they mean? Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. So reflection is basically like you looking inward and about yourself. So you answer so this is a question that we would still answer for each other or we would share our answer to the question.
Cool.
So it's basically like stuff. I can give you an example. It's like, what do you
Yeah.
think my weakness is, for example? And
Oh.
yeah, and then
Okay.
connection is questions to get to know each other better. So it's like, what is the name of your first love, for example? And it also says why did you fall in love with them? And then
Wow.
yeah,
This is so
and then
deep.
perception, yeah, and then perception is more like surface level questions, kind of, where it's like, do you think I was popular in school, for example?
Oh, okay. What is the most popular one out of the three that you
Typically, I don't really ask. I usually do it on what I'm feeling that day, but I do try and ask as much as possible. So it's like totally up to you.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Let's do so there was a connection, what was it? The first
reflection and perception.
reflection. I think I want to do one of the deeper ones just because I think that's good for conversation. Let's
Okay.
do the which one's deeper? Let's do the deepest one. Why not? Let's take a
I
crazy
mean, it
chance.
doesn't. the crazy thing is I used to think it went by deepness, but it's really not. But
Oh,
let's do connection. Let's do connection.
okay.
Okay, so let me just find one here. Um, hmm, okay. Because the thing is, like, these are all really good, and I usually just pick a random one, but like, I picked up a whole bunch. So, oh, okay, I like this question. I like this question a lot. Okay. Oh, okay. So, sorry. Okay, okay, okay.
Trying to make you
Sorry, that's
scared.
right. I no, no, because some of these questions I've like said I get a lot, so that's why I'm like, oh, again. And some of these I'm
Okay.
like, oh, like I didn't even know this existed in this card deck. So I'll give you two questions.
Okay.
So I'll give you two, and we'll pick which one we want to do. So for one of them is there a feeling that you miss? And then
Oh.
the second is what would your younger self not believe about your life today?
Oh my gosh. I talk about my like younger self a lot, so I kind of want to explore a different pathway. So probably let's do the first one.
Okay, so the question is there a feeling that you miss?
Um, that's a good question. Ah, okay. I think okay, I'm gonna give like like a shallow answer and then I'll try to dig deeper. But I think I
Oh wait,
really
that's actually a
miss.
part of the game. Sorry, dig deeper is actually part of the
Oh,
game.
oh,
Like there's a
okay,
card.
okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, go. Sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the shallower answer, I guess, is like being excited on Christmas. For Christmas,
Oh,
when I was a kid, I loved Christmas. Like there was just like something about it so nostalgic of like walking around in the snow, and there's like or just like I guess like holiday lights, but like Christmas for like my household, but just like holiday lights and like skating and like or just like the you know what? Not even Christmas, just the holiday season. I don't want to like not gender it. Oops, like attach it to a certain religion or like anything or like culture or anything. Just like the holiday
yeah,
season, just like the time of December ish. Um, and like I got so excited about that as a kid, and then I think at some point in the past like 5 years, I just stopped being excited, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just like getting older and the magic kind of just like
yeah.
fading away. But yeah, that's kind of sad.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, for like, I think that answer is very interesting actually because, for example, like that old friend I was talking about,
Yeah.
um, well, actually that was before we even started recording. But anyways, basically it was like, okay, I feel like that's kind of like obvious who I'm talking about then. Anyways, so in high school, I was like, I knew a lot of people that were obsessed with Christmas. And then I wasn't like
Oh,
before a couple years, I was not because again, like maybe it's just my family or I don't know if it's like an Asian thing I suppose, but we didn't really celebrate it that much. Like
mhm.
at the most, it was like maybe we get each other gifts, put up a Christmas tree, maybe that's it. It wasn't like oh like we had a big family dinner or like oh like Secret Santa with a giant family
Right.
or like yeah, and it's not and also it's like not recent. It's not like some of my friends in high school, well, my friends, well, acquaintances more so, that like, yeah, I don't know, like got cars and stuff like that. Okay, okay, that's a stretch. I don't know who got a car, but yeah, it's very interesting because as of last year and this year, I've been like really obsessed with Christmas, and I think it's just the idea of like hope and warmth that I love.
Oh,
You
that's
know?
nice. That's really, really
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah.
So maybe just so from your perspective, maybe it's like the idea of like because you're growing up and it's like it's less of like this exciting thing, more of like another holiday, another thing on your to-do list kind of maybe.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
it could be that. There's so many ways of looking at it, but like it could be that. I don't know. It's so just like over time, I guess you just like start thinking about like paying the bills and like all these like adult things that you
Yeah,
just like kind of like forget about like the fun of some of these like celebratory things or like
yeah,
holidays and dates. But I love what you said about hope and love and like that feeling. That's great.
yeah. Because that's the holidays is my favorite season. So
Oh, nice.
well now it is. Like I said, like the past couple years.
Right.
Um but is that the answer to your question? I mean, the
Yeah,
answer your answer?
I guess that's a shallower one. If I am to dig deeper, I'd probably say like um the feeling of being eager to be vulnerable with someone. I think in the past,
Oh.
yeah, being like I loved vulnerability growing up. Like Loved it. I don't know, like this will be a conversation for next time, but if anyone who's listening right now like knows anything about Myers-Briggs or like MBTI, like I'm in
Oh
ENFP,
yeah.
and ENFPs like
Oh.
stereotypically are like hopeless romantics and stuff, and like that was like me to a T growing up, and like I love the idea of like not even like necessarily in like a romantic sense, but also in a romantic sense of just like expressing like deep feelings and like talking about like all these like deep things and like life stories and stuff and just like digging deeper like literally this game like with other people like
Yeah.
I loved that. And like in the past like couple years like I went through some pretty hard like breakups slash like friend breakups, and I
Oh.
feel like I've just kind of stopped seeking out vulnerability and like I
Oh
love having
wow.
like deep conversations still, but it's just like not as natural as it used to be. Like there's like just like a shift or like I don't know if it's like maturity or just like, you go through something and then you're just like never really the same ever again. I think it's like
Oh
that was the
wow.
first, yeah, that was like the first big like shift where I was like, whoa, I don't feel like myself. Like it was one of those. So I don't
Wow.
figure out like those deep vulnerable things as much as I used to.
That's such a good answer.
Thanks.
Oh
Thanks.
my god, that was so good. Forget the
Oh,
Christmas
thank
one. I'm
you.
joking. No, no, um,
Uh,
no, but that's so good because that actually made me think a lot about myself because I wouldn't okay for my personality type is ENFJ, I think it's called.
oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay, cool. You're the same as my
Yeah,
partner,
like
actually.
yeah, like the command. I don't know the title for it's like the commander. Apparently.
That's ENTJ. So ENFJ is the
Oh,
protagonist.
sorry, ENTJ. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, you're an
ENTJ.
ENTJ.
Sorry.
Okay, they're very different. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
sorry. Yeah, apparently from what I've seen, apparently as of recently, it's the rarest personality type in the world.
Wow. I didn't.
Like
That's cool.
apparently less than 2% of people are like have the same personality type. So
Dang.
I'm like wow, I'm like wow. And apparently Steve Jobs has this personality type, and he's exactly who I'm trying to become. So lit. But yeah, so in terms of feeling I miss, I love your answer. Honestly,
Oh,
I
thanks.
agree. Same. But the thing is, like, I wouldn't say I'm gonna put if I was to say your answer, which is not my answer. Say your answer is the same answer, which is not it. Um, I think I'm still at that phase where I'm I'm not like actively seeking it, but I do understand what you mean, where it feels kind of like forced at times, maybe even. No?
Right.
Like it's like, oh, before it was like, ooh, like deep conversations, blah 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 blah. Like let's always. I mean, I kind of do like if a conversation is surface level, I don't like having it. Like that's
Interesting. Oh,
I
that's
guess
really
that's my
interesting. Yeah.
I guess that's my way of putting it. Yeah. Like I just like if I don't feel comfortable having like a deep conversation with you, I'd rather just not talk to you. You know?
Wow. That's yeah. Okay. I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. But yeah. So my answer is like I think the feeling of freedom. And
Mhm.
I don't and that it kinda doesn't make sense, but it does because, again, this happened in my tarot card reading, but they were like, "You want more freedom." But basically, it's like the idea of, like, feeling like you can do anything, and I guess that's also because that's part of childhood, right? I guess?
Yes.
But I think it's one thing is, like, I feel like growing up, you feel very as you have to do certain things or you have to do and as you do, like, you have to pay taxes, you have to do that, but it's, like, stuff like that that kind of stress me out in a sense. It's like it's not that I'm afraid to grow up. It's just the idea of like you're kind of you kind of have to basically being forced to think realistic. I think like the idea of like that your dreams, and again, I have big dreams, and I don't plan on like hiding like making
Good.
hiding the putting pushing those away anytime soon. But still, just the idea of like just feeling accomplished, but also just having fun with it. Because now it's like I feel as though as you grow older, everyone's like going with the flow of like to-do lists, scheduling, trying to get things done and have things done a certain way by a certain time.
Yeah.
But one thing I'm trying to relearn, or at least one thing I'm trying to read about, I guess, in the current book I'm reading, is about finding peace and like being happy with what you have, and just the idea
Nice.
of like, yeah, because at least for me, I always feel like this pressure or like this tension, and apparently that's how like people in New York feel like they always feel like they have to be doing something.
Shoot.
It
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and which is why I want to move to New York, to be honest. Be with my people. But yeah, like basically, like the idea of not feeling guilty to let go and relax. You know?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
totally hear you. Wow, I like your answer. That's really good. I think that's a very what's it relevant, especially now during the pandemic where people are working from home and a lot of people just like feel like they have to be doing stuff all the time and like you
Hmm.
almost like you can't leave work because it's always with you inside your house for people who are
Yeah.
living working at home. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
why whenever I see your post on Facebook about like you're doing basically like you're doing great, sweetie, or like 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 don't feel like you have to do anything. I'm like, wow, I'm like that's really awesome because you're
Oh,
preaching like this idea of like happiness, like support and like self-love, I guess, in a way,
yeah, 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 for sure.
which is like
Yeah.
really amazing. And I'm like,
Oh,
wow. That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on here is because not only are you doing things on your own, but also the things you are doing are very along the lines of like what I want to be preaching. So it was very like wow.
oh, thanks, Kendrick. Yeah, thanks for
No
having me
worries.
on here. Like this has been great. This conversation's been awesome. Like we've like I'm still I'm good for time. I should probably like wrap it up soon just because I don't want
Yeah.
to miss the call. But like this was great and like I really like I loved talking to you. Like this has just been so like refreshing. Honestly, like I feel like as an extrovert, like I feel like I've just been like not talking to people and like just being able to explore ideas with you like during this conversation has been great.
Oh my God, no, thank you. I was so like, I think anyone that knows I have podcast registered sign up with you, like I was like, I'm so excited. Like this is gonna be a good one. But yeah, so that being said, let's wrap this up. So thank you all so much for listening. As you heard earlier, my name is Kendrick Tran. You can find me on Instagram at Kendrick Train. You can check out my blog website, A Train on Track, which is I made for basically this in YouTube. Or you can check out my personal portfolio if you want at kendricktran.com. And where can they find you, Cal?
Oh my gosh. You can find me on Twitter at Calvin Camps. They didn't have a Calvin Campos, so I just had to throw out the O. So it's Calvin Camps. On Instagram, I am at calvin.campos. And then my media Instagram is Cal Campos Media. On YouTube, I'm Cal Campos. And just my personal portfolio is calvincampos.com.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for being on here. It was a
Thank
great
you.
time. And for the listeners, we'll catch y'all next week.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.